Hello and welcome to Engine Adventures off-road review of this 2021 Cadillac Escalade Platinum Edition. Has a 6.2 liter V8, does not have a low range transfer case, does have adjustable ride height with the air ride suspension. Does have four-wheel drive, of course, but no low range. So let's take a look, see how this thing does off-road. I was towing with this 2021 Escalade with the 6.2 liter V8, and it's a sizable trailer that's kind of pushing the limits of the Escalade. And I got a suspension warning, and it said service suspension soon. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere and not going to be able to find a dealer close by, so I figured I'd Google it. And sure enough, a lot of people are having this problem with the new 2021 Tahoe Yukon Escalade Trio, whoever's got air suspension. And basically the problem is when it shuts off, it'll lower the suspension all the way down. And if I weren't towing, I would have kept driving, most likely, just been more cautious. But because of the extra weight from towing, I was a little bit worried about it. Ultimately, what I found from the forums was you pop this cover off and disconnect the battery right here. And you might have to bend this piece up just a hair to get it to separate, but you disconnect it from there for a couple minutes and that reset the warning for me. I don't know, I'll let you know if it comes back on again, but we've driven a few hundred miles with no problem towing, so I don't expect it to be an issue. And I went ahead and disabled the automatic entry and exit height change, so it won't lower anymore when I put it in park. Hopefully that'll help remedy the situation while we're towing until we can finish this trip. One thing that I've noticed, I hope that comes into focus there, but check out that tranny temperature. So it's not warm. I mean, it's 68 outside, not super hot, and like I've been running generally at 3,000 RPM, and it's still keeping the tranny temp down at like 160. So on all of the other 10 speeds I've driven, both Ford and Chevy, GM products, whatever, I've never been able to even drive around at 160 degrees, much less when I'm towing. In the Ford F-250, it was right around 200. In the GMC 1500 AT4 with the diesel, it was right around 210. And I had a GMC 1500 with the 5.3. I believe that one's a Chevy 1500 actually. And also the 10-speed, same thing, right around 200, 210. For some reason, towing the same trailer and in fairly normal weather, I'm getting much lower tranny temps on this one. Another thing I've also noticed on this is the axle ratio is just not that good. I believe it's a 323. So for towing, I'm getting the worst gas mileage I've ever gotten with this trailer at about 7.5 miles per gallon. And I mean, it's got okay power, and the 10-speed definitely helps a lot, but having a lower or higher numerical axle ratio, even like a 355 or something, would be a lot better than the 323. That is definitely a highway mileage type of axle ratio. Alright, 0 to 60. Again, this is a slight uphill and just flat footing, no brake torquing. 3, 2, 1, go. Good jump, immediate jump. $60. So the big V8 certainly has a lot of torque down low. It jumps right off the line and just goes. Not extremely fast. I mean, it's definitely not near as fast as like the Mercedes GLS 550 or of course the AMG version of that and all those other performance German SUVs. It's not on that par, sorry, not on that same level, but it is definitely a good, powerful It's got a lot of torque. This engine is pretty well proven at this point. I mean, it's been out for a long time, and GM has done a lot with it. It's in many vehicles as far as pickup trucks and this string of SUVs from GM. But overall, it rides really good on the road. It's quiet. When you roll down the windows, they're super quiet, kind of hard to hear actually, because the motors for the windows are so quiet and the sound deadening in the doors. I do hear a little bit of road noise, of course, but for a luxury vehicle, it's pretty darn good. It's nothing over the top. And I would put this vehicle, I had that Infiniti QX80 last week, which almost, I would say, directly competes with this. It's not quite as luxurious and costs 23, 25, closer to 30 grand less actually. So 25 to 30 grand less for that Infiniti, and definitely it was not nearly as well equipped as this. And this has a lot of other features just in standard things like the seating, moving the second row seats forward and tilting them and all that stuff. That seat design was much better in this Escalade than it is in the Infiniti QX80. So a lot of really nice things about this vehicle. A lot of extra gadgets and gizmos and stuff that, do you really need all that? Probably not. Is it something people are looking for when they're buying a vehicle that's over $100,000? Probably. They want to have all those features. So yeah, it's very nicely equipped. It's what you'd expect for a $100,000 SUV. Got good power. The other option for the engine is a 3-liter inline 6 diesel, and those are the only two options for the Escalade, that and the 6.2 V8. So in my opinion, they're both great engines. The 6.2 gets not great gas mileage, but is an excellent engine overall, and compared to that 3-liter inline 6 diesel, that thing will give you a much better range and of course better fuel mileage, but it doesn't have as much horsepower. It's not going to be as quick. Here for the high-speed section, I'm going to start in four-wheel drive auto, as you can see right there, and we'll go ahead and hit the off-road mode, and we're in the normal height. So, oh, it's in the raised height. Let's go down. Well, maybe the off-road automatically moves that. So let's see. There we go. So we'll start in the normal height and move on to the raised height. Having tested both the Tahoe and Yukon and now the Escalade as the third vehicle, I remember the Tahoe and Yukon being a little bit smoother than the Escalade, but the problem is I didn't test those on this particular road. So I'm gonna run through this. Hopefully we get some good results from it. I'm sure we will either way, but I'm just remembering that the Tahoe and Yukon were smoother, but again, I wasn't able to test them on this road. So this isn't too bad. We're at 15 miles an hour. I'm actually kind of nervous. I don't want to break anything. This vehicle's pretty low. And so far, now it's up to 18, now we're up to 20. So in the normal ride height, off-road mode, this seems to be doing pretty good. This is another big one. Really, yeah, 20 miles an hour, no problem. So I would say there's a little bit of bottoming out there, but 20 miles an hour on this thing is really pretty easy. Again, we're in the normal ride height. And maybe my initial thoughts were wrong with thinking that the Tahoe and Yukon rode better than this, because that was pretty darn smooth. Let's go ahead and switch the ride height and run this same section again. Here we are again. This time we are in the high ride height, still on auto, still on off-road mode, and let's see what we can do here. It's so muddy today. 20 miles an hour. Honestly, it feels really similar to the regular ride height. I keep expecting there to be harsh hits, and not too bad at all. I believe on the Tahoe I tested, it had the Z71 and it had the 2 different ride height settings, so you can, or 2 additional increased height settings. So if you go to the very highest one, it was more rough. But yeah, this one, even in the higher ride height, we're running 23 miles an hour here, 24, and no problem. You can maybe see the heads-up display on there too, which is a nice feature. Makes it easy to keep track of some of your gauges or whatever you want while you're driving. Makes it much easier to see them without having to look down at your dash. Just saves you that fraction of a second and focus time. All right, let's get into the articulation hill. See here how the rear wheels are spinning basically together. That ELSD is doing pretty well. I threw the rock out, the center of the frame just barely touched. Made me nervous, so I backed off the hill to try again. You can see initially the rear wheels slip, and then the 4-wheel drive auto system engages the front axle, and it's able to make the rest of the climb pretty easily. Here, the rear braking catches a reflection from that puddle and stops for me. Took me a second to realize what happened. Once I did, continued with my testing. For some reason, sport mode felt more controlled than normal mode, as if the throttle were a little bit more dead. I'm not sure why I was able to control this one a lot better, but easily done. It seemed like off-road mode did apply more to the ELSD than the other modes. There was a little bit less wheel slip on the rear initially. I don't know if it made a big difference, but it seems to me that it did make at least a little difference. Terrain mode is kind of an interesting one. It is made for varying terrain, or terrain that's going to be, kind of slick in some spots, but then have good traction in others, whereas the off-road mode's more dedicated to off-roading only. And you can see the brake lights come on a lot. Terrain mode also enables kind of a 1-foot driving situation, whereas you let off the gas, it will apply the brakes to stop you if you need it to. It's an interesting system. They recommend using it for launching or retrieving boats so you don't slip on the boat ramp, and kind of terrain maybe that I'm on right now where it's muddy, but overall pretty good traction. I'm not sure, but it worked just as well as the other modes. One thing to note is the air suspension decided that it wasn't going to change heights during this section. It didn't shut down like it did when I was towing. It just wouldn't let me change heights until I was on a level ground for a while, shut the vehicle off, turn it back on, and then the air suspension worked again. Here with traction control off, you can see it does a really good job. It still applies the electronic limited slip and is able to make the climb very easily. All right, so we got our suspension back. So we're on this steep hill climb. I'm gonna go straight to 4 high and terrain mode. And I believe, oh, it didn't even do it. So I'll manually raise it up. Increase ground clearance. There we go. So since we have the suspension, we'll do everything we can. And there it goes right there. It's showing the increased ride height. We're in 4-wheel drive high, terrain mode. Terrain mode automatically turns off traction control, and we're doing the steep hill climb. Let's give it a shot. Trying to go basically as slow as I can, and we are going to take the hard line with the race suspension. I think we have the clearance to do this. The rear differential on this thing is an electronic limited slip. I can feel it engaging and the ABS engaging. So here we are. This is the toughest spot. There we go. Got a major wheel lift there. This is a pretty fun spot to be. Let's see if we can climb out of it. About half throttle, full throttle, and we're not figuring it out. So we're gonna back down, try one more. That's so crazy, so tippy right there. There we go. And I can't quite figure it out. So when I push on the brake, it's stopping me and holding me there. There we go. That's a little bit better. I think the terrain mode was being all goofy. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's a hole basically just right above the hood, and that's where the rear wheel was. So we're gonna go to the left of that. I need to maybe bring out my pickaxe and fill in just that one little hole, because it seems to be stopping a lot of vehicles. And every time I drive this, it seems like the hard line is much harder. So we're taking the what would have been much harder than anything we had when we first started, but there is still a harder line here. Front left wheel is clear in the air. And let's see if it figures it out. Half throttle, full throttle. Can't do it. Just can't do it. So we're gonna back off. We're gonna do the easy line. I thought for sure we'd have it that time, but let's try again from here on the hard line, and I'm just gonna go full throttle right now. There we go. So with a little bit of momentum, it can do the hard line, but definitely no crawling. I hate to break it to you, but that's all we're gonna do on this one. With 22-inch rims, being a luxury vehicle, I'm a little bit nervous on that hill. So we'll go ahead and get the underbody shots and call it a day for the off-road.
Here we are in 4-wheel drive high. Again, this vehicle does not have a low range, and we are in terrain mode, which automatically turns off traction control. But you can see how much that front wheel is spinning compared to the rear wheels. Now, I have driven a few vehicles into this spot, and not a single one's been able to make it out, even with the rear differential lock. That driver's side rear wheel is buried in a hole. But you can see it's really just not spinning that much. So the Cadillac's having a little bit of trouble transferring power side to side, getting it where it needs to be to make it out of this hole. Here I'm just realigning a little bit so that driver's side rear wheel doesn't drop into the same hole, and let's see if we can do any better. And here I thought I had it, but it gets stuck in a slightly easier spot for most other vehicles. Again, you can see it struggling to transfer power to that front wheel. You'll see it when it does because it'll start throwing dirt. And this may be the first case where I didn't have enough tire. I get a lot of comments saying, you need better tires to make this, you need better tires to be able to climb that hill, whatever. I get that often, and I always just say it's the vehicle not able to transfer power to the wheels that do have traction. But in this case, I believe if this had better tires on it, it would have been able to make it up that. Here, I'm just going to try again by adding a little bit of momentum, and see a big difference. And you just saw there how close that 22-inch rim was to that rock. That's why I'm a little bit nervous when I'm off-roading with these vehicles. Initially up front here, we see a plastic skid and then a metal, another metal one. There's the oil pan, transmission pan, all that's tucked up above the frame till we get to the exhaust there. And then the fuel tank on the right, which is unprotected and hangs down. So it does have some good features, but there are some other things like the exhaust and fuel tank that are hanging down pretty low. Up front, good protection. Once you get past the engine, not as well protected.
We are going downhill, and I'm in the terrain mode, which I'm really like having a hard time figuring out the brakes on it, but let's see how well controlled it is going down the hill. Yeah, so it's like you push the brake, it completely stops you. Sorry, I'm trying to stop my bag from falling. And then you let off the brake, and so right now my foot's not on the brake, and eventually it'll just kind of start moving on its own, but then it takes off. It doesn't like hold you at slower speed. So I push on the brake again, and it goes to a complete stop. So it's kind of a weird, this terrain mode is a weird system, but it does, I guess, keep you from going too fast. So if I could let it, nope, it doesn't, weird. I can't just have it set a speed. So right now it's 1 mile an hour, but I can feel it release and start taking off. My foot's back on the brake again. So it's an odd system. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be doing that, but for me personally, not really enjoying the system at the moment. Thank you for watching Engine Adventures off-road review of this 2021 Cadillac Escalade Platinum. Right now the suspension is in the increased ride height setting, so you see a lot of space here, even though that wheel's under a lot of pressure, and that is fully articulated front and rear. Get a little bit dirty, but we can maybe, not quite, but we can lift that off the ground just barely. So that's fully flexed out, pretty capable, but lacking a low range. I think with the low range that it would do a lot better. I was able to make this steep climb, but I had to give it a touch of momentum to get through. Overall, for a $110,000 vehicle, essentially, it's quite capable. Good power from that 6.2 liter V8, and I mean the tires aren't great for this terrain. You can see they're packed with mud, and maybe it would do better with some decent all-terrains or a mud terrain, but it definitely has the power, has that 10 speed, doesn't have a real low crawl ratio, and that is where the four-wheel drive low or low range transfer case would come in. If you liked what you saw, be sure to hit subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and give me a thumbs up and comment down below. If you didn't like it, you give me a thumbs down. Be sure to comment down below and let me know why. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.